further ado, I will introduce the director. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer appointed Anita G. Fox to her cabinet as the director of the Department of Insurance and Financial Services in January 2019. Through its oversight of the insurance and financial service industries, DIFS protects consumers, enables efficient and effective regulation of key economic drivers, and positions the insurance and financial services sectors of Michigan's economy for growth. Under Director Fox's leadership, DIFS's approximately 380 professionals work to protect Michigan consumers, and they follow state and federal law and are entitled to the public confidence. Prior to her appointment, Director Fox practiced law in Washington, D.C. and Michigan, managing complex litigation in federal and state courts. She has lectured in the U.S. and abroad, and she has also taught insurance law at Michigan State University College of Law. She was inducted into the Federation of Defense and Corporate Counsel and was recognized by Lawyers Weekly as a Woman in the Law honoree. Director Fox has also served in a staff advisory role on several U.S. presidential campaigns and as a board member and legal counsel for several charitable foundations. Please join me in welcoming Director Fox to the stage.
Thing I always have to do when I reach any podium, lower the mic. I don't know if it's better to be the person between you and lunch or between the person between you and going home for the day, but I'll try and keep it moving. We're starting right on time. That's always a good sign right away. Well, thank you so much, Catherine, and thanks to all of you for being here. I'm honored to be a part of this conversation. As industry experts, thought leaders in this very important area of health and health insurance and health care, you see the intersection that we look at every day, and that's the relationship between comprehensive and affordable health insurance and good health outcomes, and we know what that does for the residents of our state. And nowhere did we see that more than during the pandemic. It was like our own incubator kind of test for, what health insurance and what good health means for families, means for the economy. All those things that we take for granted in our society aren't taken for granted by a lot of our residents. Like many of you, we have a commitment to ensure that Michigan consumers are able to secure affordable and comprehensive health insurance, but we also have to worry about ensuring the solvency of our health insurers, because insurance is one of those unique products where you pay today for something that you might get in the future. So it's very different than buying other things where the minute you turn over your money, there it is. With insurance, you pay your money and you believe that the promise is that it'll be there when you leave. And if you've seen the ups and downs in our economy, that's not always an easy thing to do. Insurers rely on the market and how their investments go, their predictions about claims and other things. And so we work with our industries to make sure that they are solvent, and we work in that because we know it's important to Michiganders and consumers. And the last thing I ever want to see is a consumer who thinks they had health insurance or thinks they had life insurance, has staked their economic well-being on this promise, and then not have those funds when it becomes time to make good. Well, I don't think I could get farther than that without saying the word of the hour. We had all those pivot and all those other words. We had uncertainty, right? Uncertainty is our word right now. Uncertainty is the new certainty. There's so much that we worry about on the federal level, the economy, tariffs, interest rates, the upheaval in our regulatory schemes at the federal level. The one good thing is, while we are impacted by them, and while we are going to continue to monitor, and we have to, and look at it, in large part, the way that we have dual regulation and the way our state works, we can continue doing what we're doing to protect Michigan consumers, to aid the growth of our Michigan insurers and our Michigan businesses, and regard that somewhat as noise. And I don't mean to be flip, because obviously there are some huge and impactful things, and we'll talk about one of them, and that's what's happening to Medicaid even though I don't directly regulate Medicaid, it's impactful. It's impactful for our Medicaid HMOs and their solvency. It's impactful for our citizens. It's part of the greater picture of the uninsured population and how we keep those people insured in our state. So there are impacts, but they're impacts that we together, I hope, can navigate, even though we don't understand exactly where it's all going to land. And obviously tariffs is one of those. We know that there are all kinds of things that could be impacted. Medical supplies. We're in Michigan. Cars. All of those could also negatively impact consumer confidence, which has a large impact on the economy. I don't know anyone who's feeling, regardless of your political stripe, that they have a good sense of what their economic future is and when they're going to feel that solid ground again. And when you have uncertainty, consumers start to do things like, maybe I don't need to buy that. Or in our space, maybe I put off getting that preventive care. Maybe if I don't have insurance, or maybe I don't, like I'll wait an extra day. Maybe my kid's just bruised. He seems to be using his arm okay. That copay at the emergency room is expensive. You start to think about things that you didn't have to think about before. And that's certainly not something we want in the healthcare arena, where people have to make choices to not take care of themselves and their families because of economic uncertainty. We also know that the premium tax credits, that has a lot of impacts for us. First of all, just on an operational sense, I know those of you who are with health insurers, we're supposed to be giving you guidance, and you're supposed to be filing right now, but yet we don't know what exactly is going to happen with those credits, and those are impactful on your rates. So in case anyone hasn't heard, what the department is asking issuers to do is to file your rates as if the credits are not, the enhanced credits are not extended, but put along with your filing what the alternative would be if they are extended. So, with everything that's blowing in the wind right now, we can't say with certainty for sure that we know those enhanced subsidies are in jeopardy, so we'll file as if they're not there. And if we get great news that they are, then we'll be positioned to do that as well. The federal government recently released the proposed rules on the marketplace integrity and affordability proposed rules, generally effective for PY 26. I can tell you whenever I ask CSIO or whatever, well, should, if they're just proposed, should we, how can we rely on them? And I got kind of the short answer of, we wouldn't be proposing them if we weren't pretty sure we were going to do it. I know that's not perfect, so we're going to assume that those are going ahead. And they also made several changes to marketplace enrollment process, financial requirements that affect some certain lower income consumers. So where we are with the department, from the advice we've gotten from CSIO, from what we've had to do in the past, we're going to presume that those are the final rules, and if we have to adjust because they're not, we will, but go ahead and assume that those are the final rules. From our own internal, what we do in terms of guidance, our Office of Insurance Rates and Forms typically issues 2 bulletins every year to establish the kind of guidance you need, one for medical policies and one for standalone dental. Typically, we release those in March. The world's a little different this March. So they have been on hold, where we hope that there would be a little more answers of where things land. But we expect to have those out very, very soon, regardless. So keep an eye out for those. Another thing that you may want to know is we talk about the federal impacts. You may have heard that there were a number of issues with some insurers that whose licenses were suspended for doing things like switching plans without consumer consent, and then all of a sudden we got notice of mass reinstatements. We don't exactly know which producers and which insureds may be impacted by those. We're working our way through them, and we'll determine on our own whether further action is warranted by our office. We assume that other states are experiencing the same thing, and we don't know whether all the suspensions or terminations related to this fraudulent transfer of policies. So we'll keep you posted. We're looking, but that's another thing. And as I mentioned, we're keeping tabs on what's happening to Medicaid funding. Very impactful. We all understand that changes to Medicaid enrollment will have an impact on Michigan's uninsured rate. It'll have an effect, cascading effect. Think about it, the solvency of our Medicaid HMOs, which is something that I do regulate, because those depend on they predict a certain amount of members, and if less and less people are eligible, all the plans may not have the base that they need. So we're going to be looking at that in the meantime. But we know it also affects the commercial market, who's in, who's out, and the healthcare system as a whole, which so depends on the people who are presenting themselves to have a way to be reimbursed by the government for those who cannot pay for private insurance. So we're going to be very much working with many of you in the room, working with the legislature, working with the federal government to advocate, to extend the tax credits, to advocate, and let the federal government know in a real basis. I mean, we talked last night at the dinner about how impactful it is to have stories and as well as data. Data's great, stories are great, but you can't have one without the other. So we need from you help on understanding the impacts of those cuts, and the governor has asked today for departments to collect that information, and we will be looking to see so we can be more impactful in the federal space. I can be a little more certain about what our own internal goals are than I can about what's going on in the federal government. So if I were to just kind of articulate what the department's goals are for now, they're obviously ensuring that Michiganders have access to affordable and comprehensive coverage, including preventative services, preventative health care, and reproductive care. We want to minimize the impact of the federal uncertainty, and we want to keep as many people covered as we can, and as we've seen is possible when we have all these different avenues for coverage that are alive for people depending on their state. We want to serve as a resource to industry, to consumers, to policymakers. You know, when you think about the legislature, they're doing a lot of issues. We are focused on a certain thing, insurance, financial services. So we want to provide that expertise so that decisions that are made in those arenas make sense for the consumers and make sense for the industries that we regulate. And that gets missed sometimes. People have good intentions, they go out there, but they don't understand the impacts. And that's why the partnerships we have with the people in this room are so important. We love to hear what works and what doesn't, so that we can be a good voice for things that actually work. Because I think that even though sometimes you think of regulator and regulated as, you know, opponents, I hope that we don't view that way in our state, because an issuer's consumers are my constituents. They're the governor's constituents. They're the legislator's constituents. We all want the same thing. We want them to have that coverage. If you work for a health system, you want that payer system to work. If you work for a health insurer, you want positive interactions. You want people to be able to afford your coverage and to be able to use it in the right way. You want them to be educated and understand a complicated area. So there's so much that we can work together on, and educating consumers is one of those things. I know that many people are very afraid of like the whole system of like, oh, it's so complicated and expensive and I won't know what to do. And you know, we have a big responsibility to make sure that they do understand and that they know how to get that coverage. And we worked, you know, to advocate for more navigators and advocate for you know, information sessions. We provide things to legislators. We do what we can to get the word out, but we'd love to partner with you if there are things or pockets where you feel if consumers just had some more information or you see something that's really impactful, we'll put it out as well. Like, this really resonated with our population, to get that information out. Provide it to us. We'll do what we can to get it out as well. I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we have been successful in advocating for Michigan in this space. 2024 was an active year at the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. You may know that for the last 2 years, 2 prior years, I chaired what's affectionately known as the B Committee. I say affectionately because I was one of those things like, why can't we just call them what they are? Why do they have all those fancy letters that don't matter? But I lost on that. But the B Committee is the Health Insurance and Managed Care Committee. We lead the NAIC's nationwide efforts. They look to Michigan to talk about what we need to do to expand consumer protections, to ensure equitable access to insurance, and to reduce health care and health insurance costs for all Americans. And we've tackled a lot in the committee over the last few years. One of the big daunting tasks when I first became the chair was there's so many issues. We have so little time. A year goes so fast. Remember when you were 8, how long it took to turn 9? I wish I could go back to that now. I'm like, what, again? All of a sudden, like, here we are. We're like in May, and it feels like, winter was just starting. And sometimes even now, that whole pandemic brain, was the pandemic a long time ago? Or was it just recently? I'm lost on all those things. So the same thing happened as a committee chair. Like, how do we do it? So we went out and we said, like, we did a survey right off the bat. What are the things that are impactful in your state? And so we looked at things like network adequacy, health cost transparency, barriers to access, prior auth, and claim denials. In 2025, I passed the gavel on, but I'm happy to say it passed on to Midwest states. I think that's important for us to continue our voices. People that I normally collaborate with, I was the chair of the Midwest Zone last year. We brought 13 states up to Traverse City, and it was one of those things we planned, and you plan well in advance, right? It's October 5th, more or less. So you know what that is. That's a roll of the dice in Michigan. It was like 65 and sunny. It was great. We climbed the dunes. We did the whole thing. It's like this all the time, pure Michigan. So I continue to represent Michigan on the Health Insurance Committee. And I'll tell you the things that they're looking at this year, obviously advocating for the extension of enhanced subsidies. And I will tell you, that is, even though it may not seem at first blush, it's evolved into a bipartisan issue. It isn't one of those like, the blue states want enhanced subsidies and the red states thinks it's, too much money for entitlements, because a lot of those states now have state-based exchanges that rely on 1332 waivers and other things to fund their exchange. And if they take back those enhanced subsidies, they get less money to run their program. So we've been able to find a bridge where all states can advocate. I'm on the Government Relations Leadership Committee for the NAIC also, and we've been issuing letters to the federal government, responding to when appropriate, to advocate for those enhanced tax credits. And I hope that you are all doing the same and encouraging your members, your employees, everyone to reach out to their representatives in Congress to say that those are important and what they mean to the citizens of our state. Because it's easy to just think like, tax credit, and they were supposed to be, and they were going to expire anyway. But we've seen the impact here in Michigan, and we know. But I'm not sure all those people voting up there understand not all tax credits are the same. This is one that goes to the core of the health of our people. So please get out there and support that. In Michigan, we've been able to codify some really important protections from the ACA. So I saw the writing on the wall that the ACA has been super impactful. I will digress for a second to tell you a funny study I heard in Kansas. They sent out a survey and it said, do you support Obamacare? 85% of people said no. They said, do you support the Affordable Care Act? 85% said yes. So people do like what it does. Once you strip out the politics, it's very popular and it's been very effective. But we know that depending on the politics and depending on Washington, that we can't rely on those protections, but we want them here in Michigan. So governor signed into law protections from the ACA into our Michigan statutes so that we can preserve those protections. We've worked to the extent of our authority to ensure access for Michiganders for reproductive health care and preventative care. And we talked a lot last night, as those of you who were there know, about how important preventative care is for the health of our citizens, for productivity, for families, for setting the stage for longevity and a healthy life. So important. And that's one of the great things about the ACA is that made it reachable for a lot of people. As I mentioned, and I'll just quickly touch on again, the governor issued an executive directive today and directing us all to collect information to understand the impact of federal cuts to Medicaid. And that's the kind of data and stories that we're going to be reaching out to you to get as we fill that mandate to the governor, so that we can be in a better position to advocate to protect Medicaid in our state, because all of you know how important that is, how important it is for our most vulnerable populations. And so we're going to continue to advocate that, and we want your help, and we will work with MDHHS as well to assess the scope and the potential impact of those Medicaid cuts, so we can, one, try to make sure they don't happen, but be prepared for what may come down the line. Just to talk a little bit about health insurance industry trends, topics, those kinds of things. We know that healthcare costs are a worry for families everywhere. I mean, we know they affect bankruptcies, medical costs. We know families have to make tough decisions, especially in a time of inflation, as we've seen, where groceries cost more. Not even to get to eggs, I'm not even going to go there. But just groceries in general, our gas, our all of the things. And then when you throw in rising healthcare costs to that, somewhere when people have to cut back, what we don't want is them cutting back on the healthcare for their family. So this is something that, those without health insurance feel the greatest impact on. But even those with health insurance, we all have, as they call it, skin in the game. And how we spend those dollars to protect our families is really important, and we know people are worried about it. At DIFS, we often hear that Michiganders worry that they won't be able to afford health insurance, and that's one of the barriers they see. Like, well, I'm not even going to get on the exchange and get on that thing because I know it's expensive and complicated. So you've probably seen over the years, we've really worked hard to, before open enrollment, to have a campaign where we tell people, there are a lot of things that can reduce the cost, and there are a lot of ways that we can help walk you through it, whether it's through the federal government, local navigators, our own call center, it's whatever we can do. And during open enrollment for 2020-25, and I'm sure most of you know this in this room, but probably not everyone does, is that we saw record-breaking enrollments. 530,000 Michiganders purchased health insurance on the exchange. That's a 27% increase over last year for Michigan. The highest number of residents to enroll in marketplace coverage in state history. And remember, we were going through unwinding and wondering whether people were going to end up without coverage. So, whether part of that is a success of all of that people did to try and make sure that people who were being subject to Medicaid redetermination had paths where they could continue to get their families covered. The uninsured rate in Michigan, it's tragic a little bit to be talking about this right now while they're talking about all these cuts, because in 2024, it plummeted to 4.5%, which was if you look at 2013 to 2024, that's a 40% decrease in the number of uninsured people. That's impactful across a state. And if you compare it nationally, we have 8% lacked health insurance in 2023, so we're below that as well. But prior to the ACA, nearly twice as many people were walking around without coverage. And when you think of a country our size, that's a lot of people who don't have health insurance, especially that preventive care or the care, if you're hospitalized or if you need, your child is injured or whatever it is you need, to not have the security of being able to get that care is a burden that we don't want families to face. Last year, and this is the part on the affordability that I think we want to make sure that our federal regulators understand. More than 374,000 Michiganders saved an average of $380 a month on their coverage through those subsidies. And nearly 90% of those who enrolled were able to receive a premium tax credit, and some of our most vulnerable consumers were able to get coverage for $10 or less a month. That is a huge accomplishment. And the last thing we want to do is see that unwound. So what's going on with rates in Michigan? That's the next thing I get asked about, right? And we did see some rate increases from our health insurers for a number of reasons this year. A statewide annualized rate change of average of 10.9% for 2025, which is impacted a little bit by a couple of outliers. but still brought our average up. I guess the good news is, while we exceeded the national average of 6.1%, Michigan still remains among the most affordable states in the country. We're always at the top of that chart as they go down to from most affordable to least affordable. Even with those higher increases this year that we saw, we're still in the affordable category as we compare with other states. A couple other issues I'll just touch on briefly. One of them is fraud, Medicare, Medicaid fraud, something that continues to target Michiganders. I'm sure you've all heard your stories. We have a fraud investigation unit. We try and launched an awareness campaign just so people know, Medicare will never call you, ever, for your information. Your bank will never call you and ask you to verify your account number. Your health insurer is never going to ask you to verify your bank account so that they can get your payment, your premium payment, and do everything we can do to get the word out about how those scams affect people. So we prepared toolkits. We shared them with the legislature. We shared them with all our financial institutions. It might look like it's coming from your health insurer, but don't be fooled. Because, take out your card, call the number on the back, take out your EOB, there's a number on that. And just letting people know, we started out with kind of a more complicated message. Don't give out your personal information. Don't give out your social security number, verify who it is. And now it is like, don't give out any information to anyone. It's just a simpler message, and it's true, right? The chance of being wrong on that is like, okay, so I missed a call. They'll call me back, or I'll call and ask to verify. The other way, it's been devastating for some people. Everybody knows someone who's had really, fallen for that and lost money, time, the things that they don't need. So we'll continue to work on that. We'll continue to review plans for network adequacy. We know that there are strains in certain parts of the states on certain kinds of care, and we want to work with you on creative ways to meet those. And we talk with folks on a national level about what other states are doing to experiment with ways to meet that need when it's difficult. We have a state, as you know, has very rural areas. We have a large state. We have two peninsulas. We have urban centers. It's just a very varied population to try and figure out how you get network adequacy. But we're looking at it. We're also going to review PBMs, which the legislature gifted to us in the last one. I tried really hard to explain, like, well, we don't do drugs. We don't do that. There's a couple other departments that do a lot of those, but no. So we'll be looking at that as well. As I mentioned, ACA marketplace plan switching is something that we're looking at. I don't need to tell people in this room a couple things. One is you can't switch someone's plan without their consent. You can't switch their agent without their consent. You can't share NPN numbers. So just those basic things, and we will be doing regulatory action. For a couple of reasons. One, for the protection of consumers, but it also taints the industry. It reduces consumers' confidence in being able to use those electronic systems and being able to work with the broker, whatever, if they feel like their information or that they might get scammed. So it's better for everyone that we make sure that those few back actors aren't able to do that, so people have the confidence they need to go. So just a couple comments about looking ahead. We're going to focus on consumer protection. We have hired educators in our office, a couple more of them. We are working on strategic planning to make sure that we raise the awareness. I mean, not everybody knows that we have a call center, Monday through Friday, live, where you can get your questions answered. We'll get directed to a subject matter analyst who can explain things to consumers, who can be a liaison between the company and the consumer to try and resolve things without the need for litigation, without the time, money, and aggravation of litigation. And as a former litigator, I can tell you the aggravation of litigation is something that people don't really understand. People always think, like, you're a lawyer, why don't you sue them? The least likely person to sue you is probably a lawyer who's seen what that process looks like. And so we really like that it's a collaborative process, and we appreciate the collaboration that we've had from our stakeholders in making that work. One of our campaigns will be around PRIRA, the Patient's Right to Independent Review Act, where we act as sort of a backstop where a consumer feels that they have been denied a service that they shouldn't be. We don't make those decisions ourselves. We get independent review organizations of professionals who review it. But a lot of people, again, don't know that that's a service. They walk around saying, like, your health insurance job, we saw the anger boil up across the country. So providing avenues where people feel like they have a chance to get their claim adjudicated in an independent way may help to bring down some of that rage and that bad PR that, health insurers just want to deny your claims. So I think it's in all of our interest to have avenues where people, because sometimes you make mistakes, right? Sometimes when someone else looks at it, they're like, yeah, I probably should have been having an MRI for that, or yes, they need the contrast, or whatever it is, just sometimes another opinion. But having an avenue where people can have that heard. And so we're going to have, we got some, the legislature allowed us to use our own money for a private campaign. So we're going to get out more information so that people know that that is an avenue. And I think that that will be a positive thing for consumers. We're continuing to see some increase in some prior auth complaints, and we're going to be looking at that. I mean, some of it this year, to be candid, was about weight loss drugs. There was some switching in the market about what was covered, what wasn't, and so we saw a fair amount of those. Obviously, that's going to kind of shake its way out as the rules become more clear as to what there is and what isn't covered. We have also been tasked under a PA 60 of 2022 to take a look at kind of industry trends in prior auth so that we can get a snapshot of, what are the pain points for consumers, what's working both for utilization management and cost control, but also what might be pain points where consumers feel that they aren't getting or their treatment is delayed or denied. We're going to kind of take a look at that and provide a report and kind of provide a baseline for what we're looking at there. So I know that's a lot of stuff, and we touch a lot of things, and I know all of you work very hard in this sector, and I know it's sometimes a daunting task. There's so much to do. There's so much need. There's so many different ways that the federal uncertainty, inflation, how it impacts your things, just that some things that you can't control. You cannot, make doctors work in a certain community, and, just all the things that we have to deal with. And we do appreciate in hearing from you and how we can be better partners in our shared goal of making sure that our Michiganders have the best access to affordable, accessible health care, because it makes for a healthier Michigan. And from my perspective, health insurance, whether it's public or private, whether it's through Medicaid or Medicare or through our commercial markets, all of those are important parts of a healthier Michigan. And so we need you. We need your expertise. We need your commitment. And I hope that you will continue the collaboration that we've had, and that we will work with you to support this market in Michigan. So with that, I, of course, very glad to take your questions, especially since I have Karen Geiger, my Chief Deputy, and Bree Egan, who are both important members of our team here. This is my phone a friend, and that's my lifeline.
Okay, noted. And I know this is the moment everyone's been waiting for, because it's not the average person that sticks around to the end of a conference to ask questions about insurance regulation. So you are among an elite group. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to run the mic over to you.
Probably answered everything. Great.
Hi, Director. Thank you so much for being here. Libby Brunswell with Vertex. I actually have a question around AI. We see a lot of states kind of looking at AI and how it impacts insurance. They're looking at legislation to kind of limit the ability for insurance companies to use AI to review claims. So I don't know if that's coming up in Michigan yet, or if you're starting to look at that.
Yeah. AI comes up in all our sectors, right? Insurance, financial services. And everybody knows that there are appropriate uses for it. I mean, sometimes we don't even think about it right now. When someone calls an insurer and it says, press 1 for claims, press 2 for underwriting, that's AI, right? It was a person who used to do it. It's taking a function. It's doing it. Nobody would argue that we should go back to, let me put those things in where you're sending things on and, oh, did I disconnect you? Sorry. But on the other end, we also hear about AI being used, in claim decisions where people felt instantaneous. And honestly, even that, I think when you have to drill down, I would want a 60-second claim decision if it was you filed on the wrong plan year. That person's not here under your policy. I don't want to wait 30 days for you to tell me I should have gone somewhere else. On the other hand, where a judgment needs to be made. So where we kind of come out is, it's part of a business practice. We want you to keep pace with technology and innovations and efficiencies, but to do it in a reasonable way that continues to bring human touch and review where it makes sense. So the NAIC had a draft bulletin, it's not a directed bulletin. We issued it here in our state. You can review it. But it just kind of gives kind of best practices, those kinds of things to think about. It doesn't say you must do this, you must do that, you can't use it for this. But it kind of raises, be aware of the potential for bias, right? For those kinds of things. So use it. We're all, it's like at first, I'll admit this, I said, why would I need a cell phone? Come on, I've lived without it this long. What would I even do with it, And now, what it feels like if you've left it somewhere, I've got to go home and get it right now. So, it's here, and we have to figure out how to embrace it for what's good about it, but be careful to not let it take away what's important, which is that human review of some of these very human issues.
I will say that I have a friend that just bought a flip phone, but she confirmed that it has navigation still, and it can still take pictures. So I was like, I'm a little confused about the flip phone purpose, but other questions that folks might have? If not, I have one that's been sitting inside of me. I'm curious if you could talk about the state-based exchange and whether or not Michigan will be moving towards that.
There is not a bill up now. It comes and goes. I would say, obviously, the federal uncertainty adds another thing because, as we talked about before, the tax credits. And any state-based exchange that we've looked at in the past has had, this 1332 waiver kind of as part of the funding mechanism that depends on tax credits, so where that's all going. As a department, we will implement one way or the other. We've seen successes in states that have it. We've seen successes in states that don't have it. We're a resource for those who want to look at it. We're a resource to the legislature. We'll advise as makes sense. We're not pushing for it and we're not blocking it. We're a resource. But right now there's no bill up, and I think probably now there were many states that were in process. I don't know if anyone in the middle of all this said, let's start a state-based exchange right now with all this uncertainty. So it's not impossible. It's probably a little bit on hold now when we kind of see where things shake out.
Thank you. Well, everyone, please join me in thanking Director Fox for joining us today.